there's a lot, first I'm going to say this, there's a lot of information on these handouts. It's probably more appropriate for the loan officer in the group than it is for anybody else. But I'm going to, what I always hesitate to hand out handouts because a lot of times people will look at handouts and not really pay attention to the presenter. So there's a lot of information, so I'm going to ask you not to spend a whole lot of time trying to read it right now. It's more than you need as a realtor. But what I will do is highlight some of the more important aspects of a VA loan, how it might be different than other loans would do. A little bit about me. Yes, I went into the Navy right out of high school, long time ago. I was a Navy nuclear guy. I spent time on nuclear subs and stuff. And after 12 years, I get out and I moved to Arizona back in 1984, in November. And I started working for Arizona Public Service at the nuclear power plant, Palo Verde. Has anybody here not heard of Palo Verde? Not. You don't know Palo Verde?
I do.
You do. Yeah. There are people that don't even realize we have the largest nuclear power plant in the nation, 45 miles west of town, in the middle of the desert. Only power plant of its kind built not on a body of water like a river, lake, or ocean. You used to treat effluent for cooling water. It's interesting. So while I was there for 12 years, but I ended up getting a degree in finance while I was there. I was an operations guy. And I went to corporate APS for 6 more, got involved a lot with the generation and transmission planning stuff. And then one day, a buddy of mine who got into the mortgage business about a year before and said, "Hey Keith, you really ought to do this." So I ended up leaving and going to the mortgage business almost 17 years ago. So it's my 3rd career in life. And it's the most interesting one, believe it or not. So I'm kind of one of those weird, strange guys, and most realtors the same thing. Most realtors have found their 2nd or 3rd career by the time they're a realtor, right? So you can kind of relate, I'm guessing, maybe, yeah. My background's unlike probably any other loan officer you'd ever talked to. I mean, I have basically an engineering background, it's nuclear, with a finance degree, and now I'm in sales. And I don't know if I'm the best at sales, but I'm really good at loans. And numbers make sense, and things don't fit, puzzle pieces don't look right, it just jumps out at me. So I rarely ever miss it. We all do at times, but I actually love it. I love the people part more than anything. But VA loans. So Josh asked me to come here and do this presentation. I've done it once before, so no, I'm not like a professional presenter or anything.
Definitely are. You know, I'm so
No, not a professional presenter, though I'm saying. But I actually did a stint in the Navy as an instructor at different prototypes. So VA loans. So first, before I ask, who here has done a transaction, either purchase or sale, that had a VA loan? Anybody? One thing I'm going to talk about is some things specifically as a realtor you want to be aware of before you put an offer. Okay. Were you on the purchase side or the sale side?
Sale side.
Okay, did it go smoothly?
Yes, good.
No problems at all?
Very smoothly.
Okay, so you've only done one?
I've only done one in the last few years, yeah.
Wow, okay. Yeah, I mean, obviously they're the least common, other than maybe USDA loans. Unless you're working out in those areas, you're not going to see those either. FHA loans, obviously they're done a lot, along with conventional. VA loans, you know, one of my questions, you know, it's interesting, and this is something that you should ask your clients too, if they're not pre-qualified. You know, are you a veteran? You know, because a lot of veterans, believe it or not, don't realize the benefit they get with this loan. They may not be aware that they have that benefit. You know, you think they would, but because you have to understand, there are veterans who are in their 50s or 60s who are buying a home and have never used their benefit. So on my question sheet what's that?
And they think they no longer can.
And it may be that, possibly maybe that case too. Actually, I have a little question that I go through whenever I get a lead sent to me. And one of those questions, the last question is, are you a veteran? Because I always want to make sure I know, because they may be and they may never see me. So the VA loan is, a lot of people think that a VA loan is like a special type of loan. It is and it isn't. What I mean by that is, it's really the VA is providing a guarantee to the lender of 25% of that purchase price. So in other words, in the mortgage crisis, when things drop by 50% or more, any VA loan that defaulted, those lenders still lost money because they're only protected for 25% equity in the property. But that's what the guarantee is. Okay, so the VA is guaranteeing to private lenders against a certain amount of loss. And the way they do that, we'll talk about how they do that later. So who's eligible? This is not a simple answer about who's eligible. Now, a typical veteran who's in the military for at least 2 years is eligible and has gotten honorably discharged, is eligible for VA loan, an active duty type person. But there's exceptions. If you were in less than 2 years, but you were discharged due to a service-related disability, you can still have that benefit. If you're a Coast Guard or reservist, it's more point system. And so that is not a clear-cut answer. Really, we have to contact the VA with their service record, which is a DD-214 for active duty personnel and for for regular military personnel, and it's a different form for National Guard. And then you look up there. Also, they talk about who else is eligible. Unmarried surviving spouse of military personnel who died on active duty or as a result of service-related injury. So a surviving spouse could, unmarried, if she remarries, she's not eligible. And then of course, spouse service member missing in action or prisoner of war. There's some notes in here that are not that important. But when I get a borrower who is a veteran, I will not do a pre-qual without their certificate of eligibility. And a certificate of eligibility, I can't remember how to forgive me, but it might be, no, it's not. Certificate of eligibility is something, if you're signed up on VA's website like I am, if I have their social security number and their year of birth, majority of times I can have that within a minute. Boom, downloads, it's right there. Tells me whether they're eligible, whether they've used it before, whether they defaulted on a loan, a whole bunch of information. But sometimes we have to get a copy of their DD-214 submitted online, and sometimes even that doesn't work if they've been out of service a really long time, or they're a reservist. They may actually have to contact the VA themselves. The VA actually prefers that the veteran goes through a lender to get that certificate of eligibility if they can, because it's a lot less of a workload on the VA. So, target borrowers, first-time home buyer, yeah, I guess, it's interesting, I'll have people who are not first-time home buyers who have never used a VA loan, and they're veteran. And now they're going to buy, let's say they've already owned a home, now they want to buy and they're thinking about buying with a VA loan. And there's times when I tell them, and we'll talk about some situations where it doesn't make sense for them to use their VA. And that's if they're going to be putting a down payment, for example. And we'll talk about why that is. Okay. It says finance without down payment or lower down. And actually the case is there are veterans who will put money down, and there's an advantage to do that. And I think later on we'll talk about the fee that applies to a VA loan if you're not exempt, and how that can be impacted by your down payment. And you don't need, and limit closing costs. The limit closing costs, and we're going to go over this in more detail later. If there's one thing on a VA loan that's frustrating, is the confusion around, someone's nodding their head, confusion around what is allowed and not allowed for the VA to pay. And the answer is as clear as mud. I've actually called in the past 2 different VA offices and got 2 different answers. And so basically what happens, and we'll go into more detail, typically you need to talk to a specific loan officer you're using and find out what the policy of their company is, quite frankly. Yeah, it's interesting. I'll have realtors call me up that I know, hey Keith, I got an offer on my house and it's a VA loan, and what kind of fees? I go, oh, talk to the loan officer on the purchase side, because my answer may not be their answer. And it's unfortunate that we'll talk a little more about that. Eligible properties, basically everything. We do have manufactured housing at our company. I know a lot of companies won't do it. We do manufactured housing. My company, Finance of America, we actually sell directly to Fannie and Freddie and Ginnie Mae. And so we underwrite almost strictly to the automate underwriting findings. And we can do things that a lot of smaller companies won't do. They don't want the risk. So we could definitely do manufactured housing. And condos, just like FHA, the condo has to be approved by VA, but their approval list is much, much bigger and more broad than what FHA is. Yeah, so that link down there, that website, you can actually go find the condo there. That's one of the things that's important for an agent to know. If you have a VA, a vet, and a VA loan, you're going to be putting an offer on a condo, you want to make sure that condo is approved on that website. And you can use this website here to find it. It's actually pretty easy to use.
Is it mainly like an occupancy thing as well, or, you know,
What do you mean?
as far as, like, how many are occupied or investor owned? Is it the same kind of ratio idea?
Yeah, the VA still has the same, we still have the same kind of questionnaire with the condos. The one thing I don't know, it's a good question, I don't know if they have restrictions on amount of investors owned. Because Fannie Mae used to, I don't know if everybody remembers this, Fannie Mae, if you had more than 50% ownership by investors in a project, you could not do a loan.
Right.
Well, they did away with that for primary residences and second homes. An investment loan, it still applies, but it doesn't for primary or second home. I don't know if VA followed suit, I haven't looked at that. Oh, good. That's a good question. Yep. Oh, I can get that. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. Oh, I think I'll keep
Help
it.
yourself, yeah.
Hey, it goes with my Loan Geek stuff.
Isn't it?
It's hard to hand out my business cards, I'll say.
It's got cool stress.
Yeah, so, yeah, oh, you got one. Well, look at that. Oh, look. I didn't know you had those here. So my business partner, he's kind of more the marketing guy. One day we were talking, a little aside here, we were talking about how we're just different because we met in the nuclear world. And we were talking about one day, we're just a couple loan geeks. Next thing you know, he comes up with his logo, he comes up with the website, it's my new card. He comes up with a website and all this stuff. And our tagline, this was smart home loans for smart buyers, but the original tagline was we have home loans down to a science, which I actually like better. Because I guess if you're not smart, you're not going to use it.
No, but that goes along with the word
But everybody thinks they're smart, right? Because nobody's going to want to admit it. What's that? What's that?
see. Well, when you say smart, it goes along with the word geek. So it makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. That again, that was his. Yeah, I'm not that market savvy. Give me a ruler and a pencil, I can draw a straight line. That's about the ability of my artistic qualities. Yeah. So anyway, I'll take a look at and get back to you on this one. Condo occupancy. It's been quite a while since I've done a VA loan. Probably a couple of years. Okay, so this is a good topic here. Owner occupied primary residences only. So I actually have veterans who want to try to use it to buy a second home somewhere, or investment property. I'm like, no, you can't do that. And it's occupancy and retention occupancy by a spouse or dependent child satisfies the requirement. And why do you do this? If a veteran's over in Iraq and the wife wants to buy a house at VA loan, we can do that. They just have to be able to sign docs with a U.S. notary overseas. That'd be the only restriction. But normally you have to have occupancy within 30 days. And then don't worry about the refinance stuff. But one of the things about this occupancy that I had a conversation with a vet here recently, which was very discouraging. He divulged to me that his intent, and he had been discharged under other than honorable conditions. So it wasn't a bad conduct. But then he started talking about something about him as a sergeant, and it was a race thing, and I was like, oh boy. So then he tells me that he's looking for a loan officer to work with because his intent is to buy a house with his VA loan, and then in 6 months or so, you know, or within a year, refinance it, and then buy another house with a VA loan. I want to start building a portfolio. I said, well, that's not the intent of what a VA loan is for. And, you know, I'm convinced just like he knows that. And I told him, I said, if that's what you're doing, I cannot work with you. He started going off on this tirade about well, everybody else is doing it, and it's, they owe us, they don't give us a whole lot of benefits, and I spent 12 years in the military, I don't want to hear this from a military guy. But what's interesting is VA does something to prevent people from doing this, and I try to explain it to this guy. So, if you buy a house with a VA loan, let's say you pay that off, pay it off, let's just say you pay it off. And then you buy another house with a VA loan, and you move into it, and you got this other one, you rent it out. Or, and we'll talk more about this later, you can actually have 2 VA loans at one time, if you have enough eligibility. But here's the thing, if you now buy a third house with a VA loan, you have to sell the other 2 before you can buy that third one. Even if there's no loans on it, if you use the VA loan to buy them,
You can't own them anymore.
not if you use the VA loan.
Of course, you could transfer them into a corporation or
It
something.
doesn't matter, you still own them.
So you're saying that even though they,
Because they go by the address, you still have ownership. Well, and don't forget, that's an interesting way to try to get around it, but the intent is, I'm not sure how they would know that then, but the intent.
Right. I mean, if you put it into, like if I were going to have several rental properties, they would be in your own LLC or something. They wouldn't be in my name anymore.
Yeah, but they require the ownership documents.
I'm trying to remember how they would know that.
Do they actually go down the list of every partner?
Could they?
I know I've had this happen before, and I had a certificate of eligibility come back and say they have to sell this house, this other home.
is it an arm's length requirement, and a trust would satisfy that because it would be owned by
Not a
the
trust, but an LLC is a different, or a corporation is a different,
But
it's
it would
different
still
than a
be,
trust.
I just wonder if it would still be looked at as arm's length.
Yeah, I wonder.
I don't know.
I don't think this is something we come across very often. I've
Sell
had
it to the corporation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can show paperwork that you sold it. You no longer own it, this corporation
Yeah, sell it to the
does.
But I don't, Keith, I'm not,
You know what's interesting about this conversation? Here's what's interesting about this conversation. I'm going, it's still not right. Because that's my value
No,
system.
I agree, I agree,
And-
but I don't know how it could be avoided.
You know, it's interesting though, I don't know the answer to that question, but I do know for a fact, I got a certificate of eligibility once, and it said they had to sell this other house.
Yeah, well, maybe he still owned it, yeah,
Yeah.
but
Maybe.
if it's in a corporation, he doesn't own it,
He
the
sold it.
corporation does.
Well, but if he's, well, hold on a second, but if he's a member of the corporation, he's an owner of that property. And in the mortgage business, we look at it that way. We don't, because I'll give you an example.
They have to disclose it.
Hold on, give you an example.
Uh-huh.
There are a certain amount of loans that, that Fannie Mae will allow you to have financed properties, right?
Sure,
And then the most they'll allow is 10, or they will not finance anymore. You have to disclose ones you own in an entity other than your personal name. They don't play that game just because you put it in a corporation, you're not an owner. No, you're an owner.
okay, yeah.
And here's the other thing, and most people, I don't know how many people understand this, but if you have a finance property, you move it into an LLC, the bank can call the note due.
Oh, sure, yeah, I
They-
know that, yeah.
They don't. Well, I've seen where back when the mortgage crisis hit, one of the guys I was working at Guarantee, I was working at M&I Bank at the time, this top lender had a client who moved the property in an LLC and then defaulted on it, and they tried to come after him for that. He goes, well, my loan officer said it was okay if I did that.
Oh, boy.
That loan officer was either the top or the second top producing loan officer in the company, and he got fired.
Sure,
So I tell my clients, you can't do it. And I let them know that the bank could call it due. You can't prevent them from doing it, but I let them know.
Sure.
Yes.
so, if somebody buys a house with a VA loan, and basically all the VA loan is that they guarantee the top portion of it.
25%.
Yeah. And they satisfy the VA loan.
What do you mean? They sell it, they pay it off?
They pay it off.
Yeah.
They can get another loan that is non-related. I don't understand how the VA could do anything about that, and let alone penalize them for wanting
still
to
owning it, yeah.
keep buying
There's no-
houses.
There's no loan on it,
Yeah, they have no other interest, their
because that's
VA,
not what that guy was trying to do.
it's been released, he's eligible again, unless they make unless they
Owner
make, unless,
occupied primary residence is only the intent of the VA loan.
okay, well,
It doesn't matter. The intent, the the VA loan. You can disagree with the policy. The intent of a VA loan is to help a veteran
Yeah.
buy a primary residence
Yes.
with no money down.
Yes.
Period.
Yes.
It's not designed to build a portfolio home,
I'm not
so they
saying-
don't allow it.
No, I'm pretty vague.
But that's not what I'm saying. It's, what I'm referring to is so what if he moves in a year or two? And he's refinanced,
Yep.
that house. He's moved in a year or two, he wants to buy another house.
So you refinance into a conventional loan, let's say?
Yeah.
Okay.
And are you saying then that your understanding is that would still kind of be subject to scrutiny by the VA if he's?
Well,
if
if that's the only house he owns, that he purchased with a VA loan, he can go purchase another house with his VA.
Okay, so then another.
But now if he does it a third time, he's gotta sell it.
It's the third time.
So-
It's the third time it's the
Okay,
problem.
trigger.
So
That's a
theoretically,
problem.
well,
That's
theoretically
a
speaking,
problem in and through itself.
I just have one
because
question.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so let's say you, like, because you don't have to do a 30-year loan, you can do it under 15, right?
Right.
On VA?
Yeah.
You can do 15, I don't think we have 10.
Okay, so 15. So if you're right off the bat, you buy a home, 15 years, you're responsible, pay off that home within 10, just do a couple extra payments. So you could theoretically buy 5 homes over time and move and having paid off and owned all of these homes. You could,
Yeah.
in your lifetime.
Yeah.
And so
But
you're
not with
saying that
VA
he would,
loans.
he would be
Yeah.
forced to sell them even though he owned them outright and did everything he was supposed to, if he wanted to continue using them.
Because the intent is not to use a VA loan to build a portfolio of homes.
Okay, that's interesting.
That sounds like
Don't
It's
be
really-
responsible.
that sounds like a government decision that doesn't make sense.
You know what's interesting is, those are one of those things you find out, because you don't typically, there are things in our guidelines that don't usually rear their ugly head.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that you go, I didn't know that, right? Because I'll go through regs all the time and go, oh, that's interesting, but how often do certain things happen? As a loan officer, here's the biggest danger for me about being a loan officer. There are so many different requirements in all our guidelines, whether it's Fannie Mae, VA, or FHA. If a change is made, and it's not something that typically impacts a loan, it's only special circumstances, it could be a year later, and you may totally forget that change even occurred. And I had that burn me once. They changed how long appraisals are good for in FHA. It used to be 6 months, and now they're only 4. And I actually had one where it was a 5-month appraisal. I'm like, oh, I don't need an appraisal. Oh, Keith, they changed that 9 months ago. What? Because how often are you using an appraisal on a property that was already done, right? Now you're doing another FHA, you never got the contract fell out, but the appraisal sticks with it, you stick with it for 6 months, and now it's only 4. So my point is, there's the biggest danger to us as a loan officer is when something's changed that just doesn't normally come up in your normal loans, and then, so whenever I have something that's a little bit different, I try to go back in guidelines. That taught me a lesson. You always try to go back in guidelines to something that you may not have come across for a long time and verify that, what the current situation is.
So that sticks with the VA and FHA 4 months now, or is it?
I believe VA is also 4 months. FHA is definitely 4 months. Yeah, and that's actually as most realtors know, it's kind of a negotiating tool when you get a low appraisal on FHA or VA. Hey, look, if another contract comes in and it's FHA, they're going to use this appraisal. So, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I'm on the wrong side of that, right?
I have a feeling with that look, you just kind of had that sourpuss look on your face.
Keith, what is IRRRL?
It's an interest rate reduction.
Oh,
Yeah. It's refinance. It's interesting. It's a streamlined kind of process. We don't need a whole lot of documentation. It's to give a lot of the veteran take advantage of interest rate decline. And actually, though, the VA has been really concerned about that loan. They changed a bunch of the guidelines surrounding it here recently. Now, I know this doesn't really impact realtors, but a lot of loan officers, they don't really care whether they're doing something beneficial for the client or not. They just want to get paid for doing loans. So they're doing a thing called churning, where they're refinancing these veterans without a clear benefit to the veteran. Because it depends. Because if they're paying a guarantee fee, they got to pay another one, and how much the old one gets credited. So now there's some really stringent requirements set in place about the benefit the veteran has to be seen when he cannot be from instant, which I think is kind of cool. Shouldn't have had to be the case, but. In this page, this is where we're talking about the certificate eligibility, and where it can be done online and all that kind of stuff. Again, this isn't anything that a realtor needs to be involved with. However, I know loan officers have done pre-quals and not had the certificate of eligibility. It took the word of the veteran, oh, I served X number of years in the service. I actually had to happen with a gal who told me she had over 2 years active duty, but I couldn't get her certificate of eligibility right away. And I said, I'll do a pre-qual for you for an FHA. You want to go put an offer on this house? And once I get your certificate of eligibility, we'll talk about switching over to VA and talk to the seller and all that, if that's what you want. I talked to the agent about it. She didn't have a VA benefit. She only served like a year and a half. It's like, what? That's why we couldn't get it. So, I do not do a pre-qual without the certificate. Absolutely not. Because you don't know until you get it. Here's the other thing. The veteran could have had a loan they defaulted. I know people say buyers are liars. I think some people just forget, honestly forget.
Don't understand.
Or don't understand. Yes, I always like to give them benefit of the doubt.
What are the minimal basics that a person would need to qualify for it? Like minimum 2 years?
Yeah, as I was saying earlier, 2 years, definitely 2 years active duty qualifies it. And there's some of the exceptions. Like I said, if they're service-connected disability, they may be eligible. I had a guy who only served like a few months in the military and got injured and was released, and he had the ability to use a VA loan because he had a service-connected disability and got released because of it.
You said that guy had a release that was less than honorable. Can he qualify for that?
I couldn't get a certificate of eligibility.
Okay.
And I tried to look into guidelines where it specifically stated something about that, but it doesn't. So you just have to go to the VA. And I told him, I said, look, you can go to VA and see if you can get a certificate of eligibility, but I could not get it online. I don't think he has the benefit for other than honorable conditions. I don't know for sure, but I think he also, I don't think he was in for 2 years either.
What are some good questions for us to ask when we're talking to somebody? Because obviously we'll get the same thing. Do you have your certificate of eligibility? Yeah, we're fine. What's like a follow-up question that would be good for us agents to ask to kind of?
Talking about to the loan officer? Or
well,
to
no,
the
to our clients.
Well, most clients do. It's rare that I talk to a client who has a certificate of eligibility.
Yeah.
Now, I talked to one here recently, probably 2 or 3 months ago. He had one from like 2 years ago.
Yeah, well,
I got to get a current. But it only took me a few minutes. And actually, when I know somebody has one from a little while ago, I know I'm going to be able to get it online like that.
Well, like let's say, so yeah, I'm going to use a VA loan. Oh, that's great. So do you have your certificate? No, I don't have my certificate, but we'll get. Okay, that's great. So what would be like a follow-up question there, saying like, well, we don't want to be rude or anything, but
Hey, here's what you need. Here's what I think you should do. First of all, the VA prefers that the veteran goes through a loan officer, a lending company to get their certificate of eligibility. So it's going to be very rare that you're going to talk to a veteran who hasn't talked to a loan officer that happens to have a certificate of eligibility. But even if they do, you don't know if they're pre-qualified. So what you really need to do is, if you are going to have a conversation, you decide to ask them if they're a veteran. I always do, of course. Is get them the loan officer. Get them pre-qualified. And make sure the loan officer is me.
We all have the best.
I'm good at
Before you ever
you.
start is get them.
Get them pre-qualified. Because here's the thing. Either they're pre-qualified for a VA loan or they're not. And maybe they're pre-qualified for some loan. Like this gal, I did an FHA loan for her because she wasn't qualified.
Well, and like you said too, sometimes the FHA is even better than a VA.
Yeah.
Makes more sense for them if you're putting more down or things like that.
No, actually, no.
Okay.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about this since we're bringing this up. All right, so there's a little table that I actually have on. Let me bring it up.
Yeah.
I have it on. I put together a little spreadsheet one day, quite some time ago, and I use it to do some quick comparisons for prospective clients, and it's this little thing right here. So, and there's more information I'll show you in a minute. So I just put the spreadsheet together once years ago, and convention. So I'm talking to a client, let's say, right? Now, obviously, if I haven't pulled a credit yet, I don't know which way is going to be better for them to go. Because the biggest impact typically when I'm talking to a client about where they go, I know this is a question about VA, but bear with me if you will. Typically, the thing I want to look at is what's their credit score. Barring other issues, like for example, they had a BK 3 years ago, right? Conventional one, you got to wait 4. Or they had a short sale. Well, you can do it in 3 years, where conventional is 4. Or they had a foreclosure, FHA's 3 years versus 7 for conventional. Barring those things, credit score is what's going to determine typically, which way you want to go, FHA or conventional. Sometimes it comes down to reserves, how much reserves they have, whether they can get a 3% down conventional loan approval. So sometimes you got to flip them over FHA because they're tight on debt ratios and stuff. Even though they have good credit, they flip it to FHA because FHA is more lenient on that kind of stuff, right? They don't have to have reserves and all that. Although reserves on FHA can make a big deal. I've gotten automated approvals in the 580s on an FHA when somebody's putting money down and they had reserves. Right. I didn't have to do a manual underwriting. So those factors all go into these underwriting tools we use, right? But, so on FHA and conventional, I'm going to be looking typically at the credit scores to make a determination. And then that's just for discussion purposes. Why is it a big deal? Well, there's two things, right? On FHA, your mortgage insurance is fixed. It's either 0.85% if you put 3.5% down, or 0.8%, which isn't a big difference, with 5% or more. That's fixed. It has nothing to do with any other factor. Conventional loans, mortgage insurance is impacted tremendously by the credit score. The best credit score for mortgage insurance is 760 or above. You get the best mortgage insurance rates. If you're in like a 650 and you're doing 3% down compared to 3.5% down FHA, the mortgage insurance difference alone will cause you to go FHA. But then you also have the impact on interest rates. Interest rate impact on FHA is much less from credit score than it is for a conventional loan. In fact, FHA rates are the same down to, I think, a 680 before you actually start having impact. Where on conventional, below 740 it's more expensive, below 720 it's more, below 700, 680, it drops about every 20 points. So those are the things I look at, and why there's differences, big differences. And of course, everybody knows, I think, FHA has upfront mortgage insurance premium, 1.75% that gets rolled into the loan, but it's a fee. And I just had a discussion yesterday with Randy's conference call on every Wednesday morning. Randy Courtney is Josh's old broker from years ago. That's how I met Josh. And FHA, I was telling everybody this came out, but it's not actually affected, and I don't think it's going to be that much of a difference. FHA, you know what I'm talking about? FHA is talking about reducing the upfront mortgage insurance premium for first-time home buyers to 1.5%. Wow, it would be 25% different. What's that on a $200,000 loan? It's $500 difference on adding on to your loan. It doesn't impact hardly anything. It's not a big deal. And that's going to come into effect sometime down the road. But that's one way they're trying. And I don't know if they're going to go based off of Fannie Mae's definition of first-time home buyer, which is what? What's Fannie Mae's definition of a first-time home buyer?
Every 8 years.
What? No.
You're already at their house now.
Nope.
First time.
Nope, first-time home buyers, not what you think. It's stupid. If you have not owned a home for 3 years, you're a first-time home buyer. Really? Hey, they should say, haven't owned a home in a while, home buyer. It's kind of silly, but that's how they define it. And so people all the time go, well, I want, what kind of first-time home buyer programs are there? Well, there really aren't any, except for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. What's the difference between being a first-time home buyer and not? Down payment. And it's silly. I don't know why they do this, why they say it. If you're not a first-time home buyer, you have to put at least 5% down. If you're a first-time home buyer, you can go as low as 3% down. That's the only difference. All these grant programs, you don't have to be a first-time home buyer. There are really no true first-time home buyer programs. Fannie Mae allows you to put 2% less down. That's it. So I heard, but everybody thinks these grant programs are first-time home buyer programs. You don't have to be a first-time home buyer to use those grant programs. You just can't own another house. All right. So anyway, let's go back to why I actually brought this up. VA. So you see this little thing right here, where I have 2.15 on there? It's right there. That is the guarantee fee. And so if I put a purchase price up here of 200,000, it automatically puts in the upfront mortgage insurance premium. It's really not a mortgage insurance. It's actually their guarantee fee, but I just kept the definition the same, $4,300, which gets added onto the loan. That's in lieu of any mortgage insurance. They pay no mortgage insurance on that fee. That's the fee. However, if you're a veteran with a disability, it doesn't even have to be that much. Your certificate of eligibility may say you're exempt. So you can get a VA loan with 0% down as an exempt and not pay any guarantee fee, no mortgage insurance. And the rates are running typically an eighth to a quarter better than conventional loan. Yeah. Now, what if, look at this. Look at this little table here on the lower right down here. Okay? And this is a table of what the guarantee fee is for regular military, down with a down payment or not, and whether it's subsequent use or not. Look at that fee of 3.3%. So let's say you are not an exempt veteran. That means you have to pay the guarantee fee, and you already had used the benefit at least once. It could have been twice, 3 times, doesn't matter. Now you're going to use it again. You got to pay a 3.3% fee. But let's say you come to me and tell me, hey, I got enough, money to put in down payment. Well, hey, if you put 5%, it drops to 1.5%. You put 10%, it drops to 1.25%, and that's the most it'll go. Okay? It's really not much of a benefit to add the other 5% on there unless you want to reduce your payment. What if you come to me and say, hey, I got 20% down, but I want to do a VA loan? Okay, well, you're going to pay 1.25% fee, right? Doesn't matter how much you put down after 10. And your rate's going to be, depending on your credit score, it could be much different than a conventional loan. But let's say they got real good credit, 740 or better, which is your max benefit for interest rates. What I do in that case, I go, well, it may not be your best bet because you got to pay this 1.25% fee. What if it's a $400,000 house? That's $5,000, right? So what do? I have a software tool where I can show comparisons of loans. Here's a conventional loan with the interest rate. Here's a VA loan with a 1/4% better interest rate. Here's with that fee. Where's your break even?
Yeah.
Right? Everybody understands what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And many times they go, we'll just do conventional. Right? So it's not always the best. Going back to that question you asked before. So that's where this table comes in, which is kind of cool. So it allows me to just come up here and go, oh, subsequent use, so I'm talking to somebody, I can just go 323, and the guaranteed fee is now $6,600. This is a little thing I use for doing quick comparisons for people. I have a software tool that can actually take this information and show it over periods of time. It's called Mortgage Coach Edge. And that's really slick tools. It shows how much interest and mortgage insurance you pay over short and long periods of time, which can vary. So it's a great tool for comparing. And I'll use it a lot with people when FHA and conventional might be close. I'll show them over time, because don't forget, FHA mortgage insurance never goes away now.
Yeah.
It goes down every year based on the principal balance, and it stays for that every year. It goes down and stays that for a year, but it never goes away. But sometimes FHA is still better than conventional, based on those credit scores and the interest rates and the mortgage insurance. And that tool is really good to show that, especially when they know about how long they might be in the house.
Yeah.
Is this your retirement home? Well, once the kids are out of college in 6 years or out of high school, we're going to downsize. And so that can then impact what type of loan they're going to do. So it's a neat tool to show that. All right. Any questions on this stuff? Yeah.
I just want to make sure that I understand, whenever you're talking about the fee, that is added to the loan at closing.
Yeah. It's interesting. There's some exceptions on when you can add that fee. You can't go over the conforming loan limit. So if you try to purchase too much in one, then they have to pay it cash. It's part of it's like a down payment.
I've noticed in the last couple of years that it seems like a lot of these fees just seem to be quite different than 10 years ago, where it's several $1,000s, and I just say talk to your lender or the escrow people, because I didn't stop to realize. I'd heard that some of these guarantees are in the form of fees now rather than anything else, but I didn't realize it was like it could be $6,000, and it seems to me that whenever it gets to be $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, we kind of have to prepare our
You talking about
buyer.
closing costs and prepaids?
Well,
Or
I'm
you talking
talking
about
about
these other types?
about adding those guaranteed.
Well, FHA, right, it gets added onto the loan, so it's not cash out of your pocket. And the VA is the same way. Now, there's other fees you might be talking about. For example, one of the grant programs has a half-point fee in the loan amount, in addition to about, those grants all have fees about $700 higher than a comparable conforming loan or conventional loan. Because the grant, you know, you're either doing FHA with the grant or you're doing a conventional loan with the grant. But there's extra fees being paid to administer that program. And it's about $700. And one of the two programs we use in the Valley, it also has a half-point fee in the loan amount. So, and in those grants, by the way, I don't know, it doesn't make that much difference, but the grant isn't based off the purchase price. The grant's based off the loan amount, which is kind of bizarre. So if I'm doing a 3% down loan, conventional, if I'm using a grant, I get 3% of 97% of the purchase price. I'm not even getting quite the 3% down payment of the grant. And then I got $700 extra fees, and the interest rate's about 1% or so higher, depending on your credit score, could be not so bad. So these are, again, you know, when someone comes and says, I want to do a grant, I don't try to discourage them, but I also want to show them that nothing is for free, and they're going to pay for it over time.
And if it makes a difference for them being able to buy something and not, it's worth it.
Well, I cannot say no. It's not my place to. It's illegal for me to discourage someone. But what I try to do is show them the differences. And then sometimes that person will go ask their parents for a gift or something. So
Maybe they could wait a year and save up a little more down payment.
Well, let's see.
People
I had a
People are not
call.
willing to do
Put some
that
skin in the
anymore.
Let's see. I had a call from a client
Yeah,
the other day, 10 months ago,
maybe you should
and
buy it.
they contacted me on last Saturday when I was up in Flag, got ready to do it. That was after my 95-mile bike ride up in Flag on Saturday. I get back to my room and I was exhausted. It was one of the toughest rides I've ever done. And I have a message from these people who wanted to update their pre-qual from 10 months ago. They want to look at a house. And when I talked to them, so how much money did you save now? Oh, we have
Yeah,
about $3,000 or $4,000 in the bank, and it's not enough to cover closing costs. And they had, and then, you know, they talked about grant, and the payments would be higher than they wanted. They hadn't done anything in 10 months.
I know, it drives me crazy.
I know, it drives me crazy. And
Especially working with sellers, when they come in and they say, well, we'd like the seller to pay $6,000 in closing costs. You know, okay. And if you counter it and say, no, we'll only pay $3, well, then they can't afford to do it. Well, maybe they should wait. You know?
well, here's my personal feeling, and it's just my personal feeling. I don't think we should have grants for people to buy homes. I'm a fiscal conservative kind of guy. I don't think everybody deserves, and look, I make money by doing loans, but I've never ever let money impact what I think is right? I always said there's 2 times you see someone's true character. When they're drunk,
Or by.
think about it. A happy drunk, usually a happy person in real life, right? But if you see a mean drunk, if you know them long enough, you're gonna find out who that person really is when they're sober too, because eventually they'll let their guard down. You know, I've been around a long time, and that's been my experience. And the second time is money. When it involves money, you really find someone's true character. How many families have been destroyed over money, or relationships over money? Yeah, anyway, that's
One
one.
of the biggest reasons.
So
for
I don't
divorce.
let, what's that?
One of the biggest reasons for divorce.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Money and kids.
Money, kids.
You don't have any money, you don't have any
sex,
kids, you're probably fine.
politics,
Keith, what's interesting though, I think with the grant
Been there,
program,
done that twice. but-
is that I think the buyer doesn't fully understand, like, I think they're looking at it that they're getting this money to help with the down payment, but they don't realize, as you say, the additional
I
fees.
talked to them all about all that
But,
stuff.
yeah,
And closing costs.
Yeah.
You know, that's one thing, you know, and any good loan officer is gonna do this. You know, when I get a client like that, you know, and, you know, our initial conversation, you know, here's kind of what I have, conversation I have that kind of tells you something right away. And I have this with everybody, but it's more important first-time home buyers. Ask them 2 questions. So I want to ask you 2 questions. Say, have you thought about a payment you're going to be comfortable with? And how much you can or willing to put down on the purchase? Can or willing? And I usually find out how much they have. And, you know, there are some people who don't have quite a lot saved, but they're kind of young and they got great credit. You know, I love working with people like that, but I still don't want to do the grant. I think people should be able to save. If people were in an apartment and they only have a few $1,000s to name it that, I'd talk to you about $500 and they can buy a house. I'm like, what are you thinking? You know, and I talked about closing costs and prepaids, and I help out the agents by saying the price range you're looking right now, I'm not seeing credits for closing costs and prepaids. It's too competitive a market. I mean, that's your agent's discussion to have with you.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to set the stage, you know, so that when they hear it from you, they've already heard it from me, and,
That helps.
you know, well,
And then you hear it from the seller saying, I don't want to do that.
Right.
I don't need to.
right. So, and, you know, and I talk about the pre-quality. If you have to put down that you need closing, you know, if you need help, you're at a disadvantage of someone who doesn't. So, anyway, that's the fun part. I actually like having those discussions. We are not good people. It's disappointing sometimes you have to tell people no, but that's part of life. All right, so this is about the entitlement. We talked about this. So the full entitlement was shown in the COE is $36,000. I want to talk about that. You notice how I say in red, obtaining COE early in a transaction, important to validate eligibility and entitlement. So, oh, this is an interesting thing here. This doesn't really happen, and I don't know if people even know about it or how much it would occur, but let's say we had a veteran. He wants to buy a house with his brother, right? They're going to go on halves on a house. The VA will only guarantee the veterans half of the house.
Really?
Yeah, so let's say they're going to buy a $300,000 home. The VA will guarantee only the $150,000, and so the other borrower, the other person has to come with a down payment for that half.
Oh.
Yeah, and it has to be 25%, because that's the full guarantee of the whole property. So, you never see that, you know. And then there's other things that occur, just two veterans buying a house together. Like, I just had brand new neighbors move into my house, like maybe not even a month ago, and he's retired military, and she's still active duty. I assume they used the VA loan to buy the house. Now, they may just use one benefit, but you can actually use two. And I'm not really sure why you would need to do that unless you didn't have enough benefit from the one. So. And I've never done that. I never had two veterans do a loan. So. Guarantee calculation. So I was going to talk about this. So this $36,000 is what they call the base guarantee. It hasn't changed since I've been in the lending business for almost 17 years. But there's also a subsequent benefit, and the subsequent benefit is for anything over, any purchase price over $144,000. If you take $36,000 times 4, which is right 25%, it comes up to $144,000. So $36,000 is 25% guarantee on $144,000. But the VA guarantees all the way up to the conforming loan limits in the county we're in. Now, I don't know if anybody's heard of this, but there is a Vietnam something bill just got passed by the House. I believe it's going to the Senate. And if it does, and it passes, Trump will definitely sign it. And they're going to, it's a bill to lift the limits on VA loans above the conforming limits. Yeah. So they'll guarantee to whatever. I don't know what they're going to come out with. If there's going to be some cap somewhere, I don't know. Is it going to be super conforming? I don't know. But and what's interesting is this came about in a strange way. The House was voting on giving an additional benefit to, I can't remember if it was, it had something to do with disabilities, like service connected, like Agent Orange or something. I can't remember what it was. I have to go back and look at it. This just happened not that long ago.
Something recently on Asian.
It was recent, right? But what they were going to do was they were going to raise. What kid is that? They were going to raise the. What was it they're going to do? They were going to raise the guarantee fee. That's what it was. To raise more money. And they said, well, that's not fair to all these other, you know, the veterans, right, who are buying homes. So what they decided, the way they decided to raise the money, and I'm not sure how much, in our area, I don't know how much, well, we don't have anything over 453. They're actually, by raising the amount that they'll loan them on homes, they'll get more fee income. Because now, instead of putting 25% down, see, here's what happened. Let's say you want to buy a house that's $600,000 in Maricopa. The maximum isn't 453 anymore, it's 484, 350. I didn't update this slide.
484.
Conforming loan amounts are 484, 350. What's the new FHA limit? Anybody know? It's a weird number, 314, 827.
Say those two again?
So the conforming loan limits are 484, 350. And for FHA, the maximum loan amount is 314, 827. So the maximum purchase price would be, divide that by 0.965. That'd be your max purchase price without putting additional down. So VA figures someone buying a $600,000 home and not putting zero down is now going to pay that guarantee fee on $600,000 instead of 25% less than that. Because if you buy a house, if you're buying a house for $600,000 in Arizona right now, you would have full coverage up to the 484. And you have to put 25% down on the purchase price above that to keep that 25%.
Okay, yeah.
And that's the same general principle for FHA as well, once you go over.
No, FHA, you go over, you're paying dollar for dollar over it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's max loan amount, period, on FHA, period. In our area, it's different counties throughout the country. And so on the certificate eligibility, it has this 36,000 in it. It just says, has this information about, you can, I'm going to share something with you, it's really odd, because I came across this by accident once. And then you have a guarantee up to the conforming loan limit in the county you're in. Let's say you get a veteran who defaulted on a loan. Can they do another VA loan?
Probably not.
The answer is maybe.
Who is this? Government.
Well, it's a maybe because it depends on how much benefit they use and how much they have left. Yes. So, let's say a veteran used $50,000. He bought a $200,000 home before, defaulted on, used $50,000 of his benefit. Okay. So what you would do is you would do a calculation. Let's see. I think it might be on the next page. I think this is it. Okay. So this next slide, the certificate of eligibility veteran, let's just use this one. He used $32,000 of the entitlement on a prior loan which may not be restored at this point. It could have been defaulted on, or he owns that house in a VA loan, he's buying a new primary. Okay, remember you can keep one house in the VA, well, you actually keep two. Well, not actually. So, because you only have two times. So he's gonna buy another house, but he used up $32,000 of his benefit. Okay? Now he's buying a new owner-occupied home for $320 in a county with a limit of $453,100. So the guarantee eligibility is $113,275, max for our county. That's what it was last year. So you take that minus what he used, he has eligibility at $81,275. You multiply that by 4, and that's the maximum loan you can do. In this case, they said at $320,000 times 25 is $80,000. His eligibility left is $81,275, so he could get that with no down payment. See how that works? So you look at the maximum eligibility he has right now today, he could have. How much did he use that's not been restored? And that could be a defaulted loan even, okay?
So how do you determine if it was used?
The certificate of eligibility has that information on there.
Okay.
Yeah, so when you get a certificate of eligibility, if there's a loan outstanding that's not been satisfied, whether through default or if it's current, you'll show that loan on there and the entitlement used.
Okay.
Now here's what's really weird. Let's say, for example, this is silly, and in this market it doesn't happen anymore anyway. But let's say, for example, he used up, remember the base entitlement is $36,000. Let's say he used up $40,000. Okay. Now he wants to buy a home that's $110,000. Can't use his VA benefit. But if you wanted to buy a house that's about, I don't know, probably $160,000 or whatever, or $150 even, or $145. This is what's weird, and this is a weird. It's like, what? Are you freaking kidding me? And my underwriting manager has really good VA loans, and he knew this, and I came across this about 2 years ago. you can only use $36,000 on a house $114,000 or less. The other guarantees for anything over $114,000. So you would have to, if you used up over $36,000, you could not buy a house for $144,000. I get it, 144 or less. You have to buy over that. In our county, of course, that's likely not going to be a problem. But I thought that was really freaking weird. Yeah.
Keith,
It's one of those weird conditions that you would never know.
Yeah.
I had a buyer about 3 years ago that had some kind of a default.
On a VA loan?
On a VA
Yeah.
loan. And in order to get their eligibility, he had to pay off like $2,200 of something that the VA required that to be paid off. And to get his eligibility reinstated for some reason, what would cause that to happen?
$2,200.
It was some default amount that.
Well, you can pay if you pay the default, you get back full restoration.
Okay.
Now, it may have been he had to do that in order to qualify for the loan or the property you want.
It was in order to regain his eligibility, his VA eligibility specifically, that's what they said.
Yeah, and I don't know what that would be. Oh, wait a minute, it might be something else. And we'll talk about that in a second. I think it might be something else. But here's something though, I did actually have a vet do this. This is interesting. I had a veteran with this situation where I think he had defaulted on another property. So he didn't have enough eligibility for what he wanted to buy. So you have to, you can still buy the property and you can use the eligibility up to what you have and then you put 25% down above that. Makes sense, right? Like going over. So we looked at whether it made more sense for him to pay off the old delinquency on his eligibility or pay the down payment, which made more sense.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Yeah.
So, I
Because
could
you
be
could either
completely off base on this, but for it to be eligible for that, doesn't the VA, like, they keep track of a lot of different things, like if you like bail on a car or something like that, can't like other factors actually qualify?
So
like,
your
what kind of
father's
stuff?
question, here's
Yeah.
what I think it is, and this is what I was gonna talk about, and I think, talk about it in here. That's just about down payment stuff again. I have them two borrowers, we'll talk about VA closing costs in a minute. All right, so I believe there's a slide here, let me look real quick, that addresses what we just talked about, let me see. Right here. All right, this top bullet point, let's talk about this real quick since it came up. Miscellaneous info. Borrower cannot be delinquent on any government debt, must pay off or be on payment plan with satisfactory payment history, CAVERS. This CAVERS system is used on any government loan we do, we go into CAVERS. And CAVERS is run by FHA, or actually by HUD. And so any FHA loan you do, any VA loan you do, if you're delinquent on any government debt, like a student loan, that has to be brought current, or you cannot do a government loan. So it might be he owed $220 in maybe student loan debt he was delinquent on, and he had to bring that current. That's probably the situation. It wasn't anything to do with his eligibility just to pay $2,200. He just restored that eligibility. So but the other one would prevent you from doing a loan.
Would that include back taxes?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. Back taxes, student loans,
Sure.
any kind of government debt. So now if you have a student loan that's not government backed, that doesn't count, that's just a
Okay.
regular loan.
Private loan.
Right. Yeah, so this CAVERS system, and oh boy. I actually had one of these situations where you're like, are you freaking kidding me? So I had a client who had an FHA loan and defaulted on it. He's a veteran. Why he had an FHA loan before, I have no idea. Now he's come back to us to do a VA loan. We don't have a clear CAVERS. It's like 2.5 years since he defaulted on the conventional loan, or the FHA loan. Now the FHA loan, he can't get another loan for 3 years. VA, 2 years. If you default on a loan, it's only 2 years you can get a VA loan. So the CAVERS isn't clear. We're going, it doesn't have to be. We're doing a VA loan. It was horrifying on how to correct it. And then I found something in guidelines on the VA site, and I wanted to freaking pull my hair out. It addressed this. I was in touch with HUD multiple times. I had my client in the office multiple times on the phone, trying to, because you had to submit this form, and they kept losing it, and oh, it's not right, or something. It was, I mean, one of the most frustrating things I've ever had to deal with. And you couldn't even talk to the Keepers and Capers people. You had to talk to HUD. Well, no, we don't have a direct line to them. We can only email them. What? So you couldn't even talk to anybody there. I finally got a hold of a woman who was a manager at HUD, who's had two children, I hate to say that, who were in the military currently. So she was very, let's say, sensitive to the military needs. And so she ended up getting it taken care of for us. They had to clear the cables, or you can do a loan. But I found something under VA guidelines about a month ago, maybe less. And, I don't know what I was in there for, and I just started scanning some stuff, like, whoa, what's this? And it was about cavers. And it specifically addressed the situation where if it's because you defaulted on another VA loan or FHA loan, but you're in the time requirements for the VA, you can still go ahead and just do the loan and note that that's the situation. So you didn't have to have a clear cable. My underwriters didn't even freaking know. How often does that situation even come up? Think about that. You had somebody who had a VA benefit, happened to default on an FHA loan, now he's trying to do a loan in less than 3 years.
I bet you it's
Between 2 and 3.
It's gonna be growing because of all the student loans now.
No, this is not about student loans.
But it's
This is
the government.
specifically about, no, this is different.
Oh.
There's no time frame. This had to do with, you defaulted on an FHA loan, you can't do a loan for 3 years. FHA loan,
I
but
was
VA is 2. So it was a situation where you're between 2 and 3 years,
Yeah.
and you're doing a VA loan when you had an FHA before. I'll probably never see that. So now I know how to
As
take
far
care
as
of it.
Capers is concerned, that's a government loan.
Yeah.
Right, but, so,
No, but once you pay the student loans and you bring them current, you're good. You don't have to wait any longer.
But
You
there's
gotta
a
clear
time
this.
limit on it.
No, there's no time frame. Right.
well, a lot of people are retiring now with student loans still from 30 years. It's crazy.
Are military people like way less to
They never-
foreclose,
dude.
default?
What?
Are military people way less likely to default or foreclose on a home compared to your normal public? It's a random
What I've
question.
been told, yeah.
I would think so. I mean, I don't have any empirical data to tell me that, but I think military tend to
I
be
think
a
I've
little
seen
bit
data
more.
on it.
What's that?
I think I have seen data to suggest.
I think they
that
tend to
it's
be more,
responsible.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't that affect their clearances sometimes too? Is that-
well, if they're
retired.
ex-military, it doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
if they're out,
But,
yeah,
there was something you said, I wanted
more honorable.
to,
Where
just
there's-
said something
Yeah,
about-
where there's a time limit on VA and FHA, there's no time limit on student loans.
no.
Right.
So that can keep affecting them.
No, once it broke. Oh, you're talking about people retiring. So my business partner, my buddy, he was doing a loan for this woman who was a retired teacher. She had about $100,000 or more, maybe $150,000 in student loans. She's retiring, and she was on an income payment plan, so she's paying like $30 a month.
For the rest of her life.
Never paid it off.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to hear my fiscal responsibility about student loans?
Yes.
They should be based on your program of study.
that
If you're an
makes
engineering
sense.
program, you should be able to get a certain amount.
But
If you're
not
taking
Asian
English
studies.
or whatever, sorry, you get a
Art
lot less.
history.
It should be based on the potential earning potential
Sure.
of the major you're going into. That should be how they determine how much money you get. That's just my personal opinion. I should run for government.
Let's see, I'm not sure.
I couldn't handle all the bullshit.
What would be the limit
You're
for
smarter than that, aren't you?
mortgage
What's that?
loan
You're
people?
smarter than that, aren't you?
Yeah, well, Powell was.
Yes.
I would have loved to see him run, but he knew better. He knew what to do with his family.
Or Connie Rice.
Yeah, Conley's right. Alright. So here's my other philosophy about people and why we need term limits. I could go to Washington thinking I'll never be corrupted, ever, because my values are so freaking strong, and I think most people go there thinking that.
1 year
And
later.
once you're there long enough, you see all these other people doing it, and you're constantly being bombarded by it, you can only do it for so long. I think it's the rare individual who can do it forever, and that's why we should have term limits.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we have term limits for the president because you shouldn't put that much power into one person for.
Right, and I get that.
So.
What about these other people?
What's the difference,
Yeah.
right?
How do they leave being so rich? I don't get that. You Miss Nancy
Okay, here we
Pelosi.
go.
This is a nonpartisan discussion. It's nothing to do with Democrat or Republican.
Oh, it is.
You know, it's,
To tie that into home values, it is, what is it? 4 of the most expensive counties all surround Washington DC,
yeah.
as far as home
Oh,
values.
And by the way, getting back to this, I was actually wrong.
My son's
When I'm listening, look at my miscellaneous info, appraisal's still 6 months from VA.
out of date.
Okay, still 6 months.
You want to fix that?
No, that's 6 months on there. I just wasn't sure before. I thought it was 4, but no, it has not been changed. All right, let's go
It hasn't
back.
changed? So it
No.
is 6
So it
months?
Still
is
6
6
months.
and 6
Okay,
for
so
the
disregard
FHA.
what you told us before.
FHA is 4,
Yes,
yeah.
for VA6.
Closing costs. So, if you've never done a VA loan, you haven't come across this. So when I talk to an agent who is, and I have a VA pre-qual, I talk to the agent about what fees the veteran cannot pay when it comes to my loan or the transaction. And this is where, okay, so in the guidelines, the VA says, and it talks about it here, you can, there's certain itemized fees they can pay, and they can pay up 1% fee on the loan. But they say, there's a couple things that they say they can't pay that really have to do with either the realtor or the transaction, not our loan. One of those is escrow fee. VA says the veteran can't pay it, but they talk about it in the VA loan system. So most people think, well, that's the lender's responsibility. No, it never is. It never has been. But I have seen companies, loan officers go, well, we charge 1% fee, so it's a $400,000 loan, so it's $4,000. Our cost is only $2,500. So yeah, we can cover the escrow fee and our fees. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. But if that's not what, if you're not normally charging 1% to your other clients, you just charge your closing costs. Why don't you charge the vet 1% and have them pay for something that they shouldn't even be paying? So I'm really sensitive to that. So our company, if our fees, we just have 2 fees, mostly, and it's my company's underwriting and processing. If those fees are more than 1% of the loan amount, which to be the purchase price, then we reduce it to more than 1%. That's like $170,000 loan, $160,000 purchase price. It's not a lot. So as long as 1% of the purchase price is more than our fees, and we're good. We just charge them the fees. But I always tell my agents, the veteran can't pay escrow fee. I'm going to talk about how you need to cover that. The other thing they can't pay is they can't pay any realtor fees. Now, one of my realtors, his agents have a $350 transaction fee that they charge to their clients. They have an agreement they sign. And when it comes to VA loans, they can't charge that to the veteran. Okay? So that has to be taken care of somehow. The other thing is, and this, I don't know if everybody knows this yet, for the longest time, the veteran can't pay the termite inspection. And that's still the case in most states. VA put out, and I found this out from another loan officer at another company. I think it was, I can't remember who it was. It might have been the title company. I was like, what? How do you know that? So VA has a table of state exceptions. I have a copy of this table on my laptop somewhere. It doesn't even have a title. It just, I think it might say state exceptions somewhere, but there's no form number, no page number. I don't even know where it came from within the VA. But Arizona is one of the states where, because termite inspections are normal standard practice, like Florida, and we're one of the states where the veteran can pay for the termite inspection, just so you know, okay? So I tell my agents, the only thing I need you to make sure you get covered is the escrow fee. Now, how long you been in real estate agent?
20 years.
How long you been an agent? You've done one VA loan. Not long?
Nope.
Okay, so you haven't, this current contract's the only one you've ever seen. Current purchase contract. It changed. Do you know what I'm talking
That
about?
changed. That changed.
$99, $500.
No, but this last iteration changed something that impacts VA loan, the contract when there's a VA loan. All right, so I added this in last night before I left. I wanted to show this to you. So I took out this little section right here. See if I can see right there, the bottom of this page? I just copied that out of your contract. 2J, seller concessions. This thing says, in addition to the other costs the seller has agreed to pay herein, the seller agrees, which would be like, the home inspection, or the home warranty. Seller agrees to pay up to blank percent of the purchase price or blank dollars be used only for buyer's loan costs, impounds, title and escrow company costs, recording fees, and if applicable, VA loan costs not permitted to be paid by the buyer. Now, the last iteration of this contract had 2 sections for concessions. And below the first part, it didn't mention VA loan. It says if this is a VA loan, the seller agrees to pay the escrow fee and any other, up to X percent or dollar amount of any other fees not allowed to be paid by the veteran. So automatically,
Sellers off from accepting a VA loan.
they would, but they were automatically,
They do it.
right, they're automatically covering the escrow fee. Well, the veteran can't pay the escrow fee. So if you don't put something in here, even if you're not asking for any other concessions, if you don't put something in here, who's gonna pay for the escrow fee? And I say the agent. If the agent does not put it in here, you need to cover your client. I'm just being honest with you guys. That's why you need to have this conversation with your lender and ask him, what can't the vet pay? Because not every lender is gonna give you the same answer. So what I tell my clients is, you need to put a credit in here for the offer to cover the escrow fee. Now, how do you know how much the escrow fee is? Well, you can call your title company, right, and ask. Or if you have a table like I do that's old, I kind of fudge it. I can say, well, it's about this amount. And then you can always go to the comment section and say, the credit on line 2J or whatever for the escrow fee, right, will be no more or no less than the actual escrow fee. So that could just be, that number you have in there could just be an estimate, and then once the actual fee is, it can be covered then. Does that make sense? That's what I suggest they do.
I'd probably be on the phone talking with the lender before I accepted or considered accepting the
But the
contract.
lender has nothing to do with the escrow fee. I don't have nothing to do with it. The
Right.
VA says it can't be paid by the veteran.
Back in the day, didn't you say?
Because I mean, and that's why the contract was written that way before. I don't know why they freaking changed it.
Didn't you? Wasn't it you that told us $500 or 99? What was it that you actually told us to write into the other contract?
Well, yes, because what we were talking about then was, it had nothing to do with the escrow fee, because that was already covered by the verbiage. It had to do with the termite inspection, and there was something else before that we don't charge anymore. There was something else, I can't remember what it was, but yeah, but it's not even the termite inspection anymore.
But it's still
In
about
my
$500
company,
they're talking about
right,
here.
my company is only the escrow fee. That's it. I'm just, you guys do whatever you want, but I've seen people leave this out, and then it's a problem. And they try to go back to the seller, and the seller's like, no, I didn't agree to this on the contract. The agent simply ends up eating it.
Good heads up, thank you, sir.
I've had my agent come back and go, well, you share? I go, I didn't screw up, I told you about this. That's why, a good loan officer helps an agent be successful and vice versa, right? We're a team, and there are things that, you can tell a client that helps the loan officer and vice versa, or tell a loan officer directly. It's always good to have a conversation about a purchase contract before you submit it, if there's anything different. What if you have a manufactured home? What if you have shared well or something? Is that going to be a problem? Right? Things like that. You should always talk to the loan officer. It's just a good thing to do up front to make sure it's not going to be a problem. Issue with access to the property. We're not talking normal subdivisions. But you probably have more of that up there with you guys. All right. So I just wanted to cover that real quick. So let's back up a little bit. Oh my God, it's 11:20 already. I'm sorry, guys. I can go on and on about this. All right, so I'm going to tell you something else real quick, and it's really 2 things on seller paid concessions, by the way. You can only cover closing costs and prepaid normal stuff. Can't be used to buy down the rate. The VA doesn't even allow it. That's a concession. You have to adjust the purchase price for that. Okay, so it's only for normal closing costs and prepaid. Does that make sense? That's what all that talks about.
Now, this might be a silly question and stuff, but it seems like, you have like your typical like inspection, but it seems like VA also have like their own inspection, and so if that's been taken care of,
Part of
then
the
it's time
appraisal.
for the appraisal.
No,
No.
the VA doesn't do an inspection, they just do
Okay,
an appraisal,
appraisal.
just like any other deal. And there's certain requirements, like FHA is different than conventional, they have to do a head and shoulders attic inspection, for example, right? Just take a head up and look around, you don't need to do that for conventional. VA tends to look out for the veteran, and so the appraisers tend to be a little more strict about chipping, peeling, paint, stuff like that, right? Those gotta be taken care of. The other thing on VA loans, a couple things real quick so you know, we all order through the same portal. We don't use appraisal management companies. We all pay the same fee. It's set by the VA, $600. They went from $450 to $600 like that, and they've been $450 for years. All of a sudden it changed.
600 for a VA appraisal?
Yes, that's standard. We all pay it. The vet pays it. It's a pass-through cost. It has nothing to do with the lender. The other thing on VA appraisals, it has to go through a notice of value. So an underwriter has to review the appraisal and they have to go through this checklist, and they issue this NOV, notice of value, to the borrower.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's when they can actually get the appraisal to the borrower. We're not even supposed to send the appraisal to the borrower until the notice of value has been reviewed. Appraisal by the underwriter, and there's an NOV issue that's required by VA. The other thing I want to talk about that's a little bit different on VA loans and impacts you guys. What time do you guys plan on being out of here?
Yeah.
Okay, good, then I'm not, I just don't like overrunning. So, as we all know, in Arizona, we always do termite inspections. Now, do you typically send your lender the termite inspection? Unless it's the VA loan.
Maybe that's smart.
No, unless it's the VA loan.
Okay.
VA loans require termite inspections, they require them. Here's the thing, you want to get that to your lender as soon as possible. Why?
Send it to the other people.
Well, actually, if it's a good loan officer, before the underwriter looks at it, the loan officer's gonna look at it, he's gonna tell you what?
Because
If there's earth to wood contact, it's gotta be fixed. If you have plants touching the house, trees touching the house, they gotta be trimmed back. If you have signs of water, like, it's gotta be addressed. Okay, the sprinkler head was, not proper drain. If it's improper grading to the house, it's gotta be addressed. These have to be addressed before we close. You don't wanna wait till it gets to the freaking underwriter, and then you're coming back and trying to address them. Or, oh wow, we need underwriting, oh, I haven't got my termite inspection yet. So try to get that to your loan officer ASAP when it's done. You're gonna get it done with the inspection. Right? We don't want the inspection, never give your loan officer the inspection, ever. Well,
Yeah.
unless it could actually help mitigate something, but you definitely want to get a net termite inspection. They need it, they have to have it. And that's what I look at and try to get my agents working on it right away with the seller. You don't want to hold up the process for that. Okay. So that's the big difference. That's one of the big differences on VA loans compared to any other loan we do. Any other loan we don't need it. Unless what? We don't need the termite inspection unless
Termites are discovered
by
by the inspector.
Appraiser.
The appraiser.
bingo.
Oh, okay.
Yep, we don't know what the inspector's got.
Right, okay.
But if appraiser said there were signs of potential termites, now we need a termite inspection. And if there are, we need treatment.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Got that? So,
Yes.
just,
This morning,
that's good.
just listening and
Oh, and by the way, guys, look, I'm one of those people that I have no problem if anybody ever calls me up and asks questions. I don't care. Even if you haven't sent me a deal, I don't worry about that. I'm there if you need my help. I'll give you the expertise I have, and I will tell you this. If I don't think I know the right answer, I will tell you that. And then I'll find out and get back to you. Okay?
Or you might have to wait for a few minutes after you might file the library.
That does happen. Those clients have to wait. And then they weren't ready, so I told them, no, you're not gonna go with it.
Awesome.
What? Oh, yeah, that was a tough one. It got over 100 degrees on that ride. Because we started flag, we went down to about 4,800 feet. It got freaking hot. And the climbing's all in the back end. Just tough. And I haven't been riding much this year, so accident about 13 weeks ago, I took it off. I broke 7 ribs, yeah. That knocked me off for a while. All right, student loan payments. All right, I just want to cover this because this can, again, some of these things we're talking about are really not something that directly impacts you guys, but some of this information to me is interesting to know as a realtor, even though you may not be dealing with it, like the loan officer. And that's student loan. VA is the only loan anymore that we can actually not count student loans and deferred for at least a year. We used to be able to do like conventional FHA, but that's been done away with quite some time now. VA still allows it. If it's deferred for at least a year past your closing date, you can not have to count the debt. It's the only ones allow it. However, if it does have to be counted, how do you count it? Well, you have to establish the baseline. And when you establish the baseline is you take the balance of the loan at a rate of 5% of the balance divided by 12 months. So in this case, you have 25,000 times 5% is 1250 divided by 12 is 104.17. That's the base loan, the base payment amount. On the credit report, if it's more than that, then you use what's on the credit report. If on the credit report it's less than that, you have to use this base loan amount or get documentation from the lender, the student loan lender, of what the fully amortized payment actually is. And if it's less than this baseline, then you can use that. So that's how they do it. This is different than the way the other ones are done. The other ones, FHA and conventional loans, I don't know how many people know this. If there is it used to be, and it's changed quite a bit there in a very short period of time. On conventional loans, if there is a payment on the credit report, you can use that payment. If it's 0, you have to use 1% of the balance on the credit report, or you get something showing the fully amortized payment. If it's less than 1%, you can use it. FHA, you have to use 1% of the balance, or the fully amortized payment, whichever is more or less. If the fully amortized payment is less, you can use the fully amortized payment. But if there's a pay, it doesn't matter. If there's a $50 payment on there and the calculated payment's $100, you gotta use $100. You can't use that $50. So those are the three ways. They're all that slightly different. All right. Done with everything but miscellaneous info. Oh, I want to talk about one other quick thing. It's just an FYI, kind of an interesting, unique thing about VA loans. VA loans look at a residual income. It's the only loan that does this. So what does that mean? So in our software, we have the formula. So we look at, on a house, when we look at residual income, we take the borrower's total income adjusted for income taxes, federal and state, and Social Security, not Medicare anymore, it used to be, but not. So we take that income, let's say it's $5,000, we subtract out taxes, we subtract out Social Security, state and federal, and we just go to paychecks and do a calculated amount. So then they have whatever the income, and then we subtract their debt, monthly debt, including the new house payment. And we also subtract out what they call the maintenance fee. So we take the square footage of the house times 14 cents per square foot, and that's the maintenance fee on the house. And we subtract that out. And then based on where they live and how many family size there is. So for example, in the West, where we're at, if you have 4 people in the house, you have to have $1,117 left in residual income after all that's taken into account, or they don't qualify. If their debt ratio is over 42%, that has to be higher. So I think by 10%. So it's a unique thing about VA loans that no other loan does that. So what they're trying to do is, now, when someone has a lot of income, even if they have real high debt ratios, this never is a problem. But if you have low income, right, and your high debt ratio, this is where this really can come into play. But somebody who has a lot of, someone who's making $150,000 and their debt ratio could be 50%, you're not gonna have a problem with this. But somebody who has maybe making $3,000 a month and they're at 48% or 45%, they may not pass this test, especially if they have a lot of kids. So, now, that's a thing that a lot of loan officers don't ever look at, never do. They just don't do it. They never calculate residual income. Now, I don't necessarily do it for certain pre-quals. because I know I'm not gonna have a problem with it.
Yeah.
But when I have a lower income, and I will go do this before I actually pre-quote. And again,
For not wasting
I'll
everybody's time.
I'll guarantee, I don't know if you'll find a loan officer, you'll probably find a loan officer too, somewhere who might do that, but I almost guarantee you no one does.
They wear so many extraneous details.
Yeah.
What? So if nothing else, it makes you appreciate that.
Jeez.
Look, I've made mistakes in my life and in this business, and I think I've had, maybe I can count on one hand how many loans didn't close because I screwed up. But I can tell you I've done something that's not legal. I wrote a check out of my personal account when they paid it for an appraisal, and I paid them back. And I am not allowed to do that, so don't tell anyone.
Right.
That's me. I mean, I was like, I screwed up, and they couldn't get a loan, and I paid for their appraisal.
I'll beep that out of the video.
What's that?
I'll beep that out of the
Oh,
video.
please do. I forgot your video. Was he cussing? Kinda. No, but it's just, it's one of those things, you know, I don't like making mistakes. And if it costs my client, I can't let him hear
Don't you think that, I know that there are probably a lot of guidelines as far as what you're allowed to do, much like as a realtor, where we have a lot of guidelines, but there have been.
it. Talking about gifts and money and all that?
Well, there have been several times where our lenders and escrow and people like that have all chipped in to help something forward.
You have to pay your comparable percent. Let's say, for example, it's an advertisement, and I've got 1/4 of the page and you got 3/4 of the page, I can't pay half the cost. I gotta pay my share of that advertisement.
Well,
That's RESPA.
And is it the same guideline somehow for, if we need to come up with $1,000 of unexpected somethings for something to close where, I know.
No, you can give, no, that's different. You can give credits towards closing costs in 3 ways as a realtor. You can do that. Yeah, that's part of the maximum that's allowed. Like on a VA loan, the max you can give is 4%. On a conventional loan, an FHA, it's 6%. Conventional loan for a investment property, I think it's 2% on an investment property are the most concessions you can give. I always have to look that up if there's ever concessions on investment, because I forget that number. But those are concessions, and the realtors can contribute towards that, they can. So, it's called interested party contributions, is what it's called. All right? Couple things on here. We already talked about the CAVER's judgments and liens must be paid off or on a payment plan with satisfactory payment history. In the payment history, most they're looking at, been doing it for at least 3 months. That's typically what the underwriters look at. They want to make sure they didn't just get on it just to get the loan.
Yeah.
Everybody know about community property estates when it's a government loan, about the spouse? All right, let's talk about this real quick, because this is a VA loan, it impacts this. So, in community property estates, if you're doing a government loan, which is non-Fannie Mae or non-Freddie Mac, and you have a spouse, even if they're not going to be on the loan, we have to pull their credit. Any debts they have that's not on your credit report already, we have to add them to your debt load. Okay. If the spouse had, and this has been an issue, and this is addressed on a case by case, I think, because I don't know all the specifics, to be honest with you, but if the spouse has judgments or liens, we have to look and see, make sure it won't impact the property. If it does, they're going to have to pay more. It has a potential to impact the property. For example, if it's a tax lien on the spouse, they did maybe separate taxes, that could impact, because community property estate, they have to pay those off and be on a payment plan. So that's a case by case. You know, so when it comes to spouses being, on a loan, a lot of times, well, my wife doesn't make any money, so I don't really need her on there. I go, well, you have to put her credit anyway. So now, why would we not want to have her on there if we pull credit? We got to counter debt. Would there be a reason I wouldn't want her on the loan? Anybody? So, all right. So somebody says, well, say it louder.
She's got bad credit.
Remember how we price loans? It's based off the lower middle FICO score. So if there's 2 borrowers on there, and if your spouse has a worse credit score than you, that impacts the rate, you might not want to have her on there. I've had clients where the spouse made money, but I didn't need it. I said, dude, you can keep her on there.
Yeah.
But here's what your rate's going to be, here's what it would be without her. You can still put her on title.
I've seen that.
Right, so So that's part of what a good loan officer gets to do, right? Give advice, information. I always tell my clients, my job is to give them information. Their job's to make a decision. You can talk about pros and cons, but it's your decision. Everybody comes from a different viewpoint, different perspective. Somebody may make a different decision than I would under the same circumstance. So I just say, here's the deal, here's the impact. Okay. If someone's not on a loan, can they be on title?
You used to say yes.
And you have it for title later?
Only one that can be on a title with a veteran is a spouse. Okay. Can you add title? Of course you can do that. But I have clients all the time. I'm just ready to close on Wednesday. She buying the house she lives in. She wants her son on title. And I said, well, I'm not going to give you legal advice, but you can do a warranty deed where it's what do you call it?
For life.
No, it's one where when you die you pass it on. What's it called?
Warranty for life.
No, it's not called that. It's dang it. Anyway, it goes into effect upon the death of the homeowner, and then the property passes to whoever's on that deed of trust. Okay, so they have no claim to the house as long as the person who owns it still alive. Right? It's no, that's how you hold title. It's I'll try. I'll remember. I gotta quit thinking about it. But anyway, so the way if you ever have, I'm going to share something with you that works every time. If you're ever going to have someone buy a house, and let's say a couple's buying a home, which this happens more often than not, or a couple's, I don't mean couples buying a home more often than not, but the situation occurs more often than not when it's a couple buying a home and one of them doesn't want to be on the loan, or it doesn't make sense to put them on the loan, but they want the spouse on title. So title company wants both people on the contract, okay? So typically, my company would look at, and we actually don't really have a problem with this, but I know other companies do, we look at it and go, oh, whoa, wait, they're both on the contract, so we need them both on the loan.
Yeah.
Well, no, we only need one on the loan. So actually a title company once told me this, and said, Keith, here's what I've had agents do, and it seems to work for everybody. So I share it with you, and I share it with all my agents. Whenever I have an agent doing a contract, and one of the buyers is not going to be on the loan, but they want to be on title, I say, put both names on the contract, and then in the comment section of the contract, say, so-and-so is a non-borrowing buyer. And it's right in the contract. I've been doing that now for probably 2 or 3 years, never had a question with title or underwriting, period. Because what you're specifying is that person's going to be on title, but they're not on the loan. And it satisfies everybody. So in the comment section of the contract, there's a comment section.
Additional terms.
Right, additional terms. Just say, Mary Jones is a non-borrowing buyer. And so it tells the lender she's not on the loan, and it tells title she's on the contract. It works every single time.
Now, really fast too, on flipping.
Yeah. No problem. Those are not a problem with you. And it's not a problem with Fannie Mae either. You just have to have the appraisal justified, so the appraisal can be scrutinized a little bit more. But Fannie Mae doesn't have a problem with flips. VA doesn't have a problem with flips. FHA, what's the story on
So
FHA?
even if it's not owner occupied?
Oh no, that has nothing to do with it. Flipping doesn't have anything to do with owner occupied.
Oh, I see, okay, done, okay.
Well, in this case, you can't do non-owner. I'm talking about more commercial. So, what's that? On FHA, what's the requirements for FHA for flipping? You can't write a contract until at least the 91st day after the prior buyer bought it. 91st day. Okay, so.
Say that again?
So if somebody bought a house 60 days ago, and now you write a contract on it, on an FHA loan, you cannot close on that loan.
It's not a conventional, but on FHA.
FHA is the only one with that restriction.
Has to be written on the 91st day?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Written on the 91st day. Not dated before that.
That's interesting, yeah.
So FHA is the only one who, you have to wait those 91 days. So, yeah, I've had people who do it, they go, well, we're gonna wait till 91st day. Okay, fine, cancel that contract, and write a new one later. You can't wait and then hand it in.
It's only close on the 92nd day.
Can't do that. All right, commission income. I added this in, guideline change. Okay, so FHA is still the only one who does this. I just did a loan for, well, we're getting ready to close in a few days, for a client whose 50% of his income is commission. And so on an FHA loan, I need his tax returns to verify whether or not he has a bunch of business write-offs. Which is interesting because the new tax return's kind of done away with that, and I'm wondering when FHA is going to catch up. New tax returns so freaking weird. In fact, I had an underwriter on this file go, I need all his schedules on his tax return. I think you got them all. It's 2 pages. It's a 1040, and on the 1040, I don't know if you really looked at your tax return. On the first page, it says page 2. Because page 2 is now on page 1, and they call it page 2. I don't know if anybody noticed that.
No.
Yes, absolutely. I'm like, okay, that's weird. So, there is no, so he only had one schedule for student loan stuff. I told my process, I go, I just reviewed this thing. I don't see what there's any other schedules. And then I called the client just to verify. He goes, that's all. I did my own tax, but that's all it is. I was like, I thought so. Even the underwriters aren't that familiar with the new format yet. Kind of weird. It's really, I don't like it. And maybe it's just because I haven't been, using it that long yet. But all right, so conventional loans and VA has now gone to where we don't. Commission income is 25% more of income. They're not required to be deducted from income or added as monthly liability with the exception of the following. So, unreimbursed expenses used to have to be deducted from income if your commission income was more than 25% of your total income. Conventional loans did away with that, and now VA has, with the exception of these few exceptions right here: armed forces, reservists, qualified performing artists, whatever that is, fee basis state or local officials, and employees with impairment-related work expenses. So if I ever get anybody in those categories, I'll be going to research it. But kind of an odd thing. But we don't have to deduct unreimbursed expenses for the typical borrower. Only on FHA. Fortunately, my client didn't have any unreimbursed expenses. Let's see. There's some situation we have to get prior approval from the VA to benefits. You have to send to the VA for approval. I actually came across this once. The guy ended up not doing a loan because of it. I had a client, I got his certificate of eligibility and had a statement I'd never seen before. He had a non-service related disability leave. So he was getting money, but it was non-service related. That loan has to be underwritten by VA, and I know why. Because they're sitting there going, wait a minute, you're getting a government benefit. Now, if you're able to qualify for a home, you need to look at your income and see if you still qualify for that disability benefit.
Oh,
He would have lost it. He ended up not buying the house.
wow.
He didn't need it. You heard me on that.
Yes, yeah.
Isn't that interesting? I came across that once. I was like, whoa, what is this? And I had to go, in
I
my
like it.
process, went and did the research for me because I was busy. So is this what it is? I'm like, well, that's really weird. So I had to go to this guy and he's like, oh, okay, well, I don't think we'll buy the house. Didn't want to lose his money.
Yeah,
At least now in the VA
yeah.
loan, he wasn't going to do it. All right, and I talked about notice of value there before. In that, my dear realtors and loan officer, hope you learned something, is VA loans.
I have a question. In regards to, and I heard you say when I walked in that you do manufactured homes on property.
Yeah, we will. Double wides, can't be single wide.
Does it have to be, a stem wall?
You gotta have an approved foundation. Okay, this is a good question. Okay, so on conventional loans versus VA versus FHA. Conventional loans and VA loans, let me back up. FHA loan requires an engineering inspection on a manufactured home. Requires, period. And almost every single time I've done one, and had to go in there and add additional anchors and tie downs to the house, almost every single time. And I've got a great engineering company that does great inspections. They have 2 people they recommend to do those tie down things. I haven't done one for quite a while, but the guy's really good. And the ones he uses for tie downs are really good. VA loans and conventional loans, they go based off what the appraiser says. If the appraiser has a question about the proper setting of the home and all that, then we have to have an engineering inspection. And it could be not even the setting of home, it could be, I had one for example, they added like a cover over a patio or something, they attach it to the house. You can't attach stuff to a manufactured home. So there was a remedy, and the buyer was willing to do this. I'm not sure if the seller did it, paid for it, the buyer did, but they actually went out, detached it from the house, and they put up posts. Yeah, so you've seen this done, you know what I'm talking about. They put up posts, so it was now anchored to the ground, not to the,
They allowed it in one.
and it had to be engineering approved.
2 houses down from us, it was a VA, and they didn't have to actually detach it, but they had to put the structure up alongside of it, so that if anything happened, it captured the weight if any fault occurred, and they had to put it in, but it had to be engineered.
Oh yeah,
To do that.
engineer has to approve it,
Yeah.
engineer.
Second question about, does it have to be the original, if somebody's gonna buy?
It cannot be moved.
It cannot have been moved?
It has to have spent in that one location. You cannot, I don't know of any loan we can do. All the guidelines, I've looked at them all before, you cannot do a manufactured home that's been relocated. Well, because of the potential for structural damages too.
And they still have to have some kind of identification tag?
Well, they do, but we can order them. Because, there's 2 small tags on the outside that are basically credit card size. Sometimes they've been painted over, sometimes stuccoed over, and we can order those. And then typically on the inside where the water heater is at is the fact sheet of the house, and we can order that too.
Okay.
So, I've actually had my processor have to do that.
Well, you're talking to 2 people from Black Canyon City, and we don't know what site-built homes are out there.
That's why I kind of made that comment earlier. So yeah, those kinds of things. And and Josh is right. There's a lot. Sometimes a loan officer screws up, and it's not necessarily he's not a good loan officer. It's just something that just he just didn't think about.
That's what they're saying, and every loan is unique.
Well, for example,
What's great about our job is
Yeah.
every single transaction is different.
you see this document right here? This is my company's guidelines on VA loans. One of our VA loan programs. What does that mean?
There are others.
This is for a loan that we're going to sell off to an investor. Okay. The one that we send directly to Ginnie Mae for guarantee, directly to them, is about a quarter or a third of this. Why is this so? And this includes a whole bunch of overlays that the investor require. And I printed this one because it has pretty much everything there. So if you guys have a question for me, I might be able to pop in here real quick and see it. Answer it.
Does VA have any kind of a program, or do you?
Hold on, thought for a second. I want to finish real quick. One of the advantages of working with someone like my company that sells directly to Ginnie Mae, and why would we do it all the time? Well, to go to directly to Ginnie Mae, is the cost of the loan and the pricing is 10 basis points higher. What does that mean? So if I have a $200,000 loan, it's $200. So it's $200 that the client pays, or it could be $200 they don't get as a credit back, because our rates aren't always right dead on. So I may have a rate that has 15 basis points extra income that I give back to the client as a credit. So it costs 10 more basis points to go this way, to go directly to Ginnie Mae. But why would we go that way? Because we're going right off, almost directly off the DU underwriting guideline findings, and so we have a lot less documentation requirements for the better, and a lot less overlays. So it's rare that I don't just do the extra 10 basis points and go that way. It makes it a lot easier. We don't need tax returns typically. A lot of times on these programs, even Fannie and Freddie, they require tax transcripts. We go directly to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, we don't require tax transcripts. They can get them later. We don't need them for closing. That can be huge. You've heard of files before being held up because, transcripts take a long time if the system's down, or, when the IRS wasn't working. We don't need transcripts. So, and the nice thing about our company, because it's so big, and we're owned by Blackstone out of Wall Street. When we sell directly to Fannie and Freddie, when I first came to this company, it was Pinnacle Capital Mortgage. We sold directly to Fannie and Freddie, but it was 25 basis points to be there. And then it got reduced to 10. And then we got bought up by these guys, Finance of America, a few years ago, and there's no fee to go directly. So why would I ever not go directly to Fannie and Freddie? And I'll get an underwriting guide, the underwriters now get used to it. What's that condition for? This is going directly to Fannie. Oh, I'm not used to that. Quit doing that crap. Just look at the findings and just ask for that stuff. So it's a huge advantage for a company that can do that. Huge benefit to the client. I mean, on a typical person who is either hourly or salary, I need pay stubs covering 30 days of pay, one W-2, once we do an employment verification, and 2 months of bank statements. And it's typically all you need. And if they're self-employed, if they've been self-employed for at least 5 years, you need 1 year tax returns. If it's less than that, we need 2. You know how the income works on that? We look at 2 years. If this year, current year, or last year's tax returns were higher than the prior year, we average them. If it's lower, we use a lower one. And we got to make sure there's not a trend of declining. So this will work out.
Do you have a product or a vet who wants to either